You ever been totally stumped by a weird engine problem? You know, a check engine light that just won't quit, a rough idle that makes your car shake at stoplights, or maybe it has trouble starting right after you get gas. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a small and honestly, an often overlooked part that could be the secret culprit behind all that frustration, the purge valve.
It's that sinking feeling, isn't it? Your car's performance is just off. Those warning lights are pretty hard to ignore, and it feels like you're trying to solve some kind of complex puzzle with a million pieces. But what if the solution is actually way simpler than you think?
So, does this look a little too familiar? That dreaded check engine light glowing on your dash, and then when you come to a stop, the engine just feels all choppy and unstable? If you're nodding your head right now, trust me, you are in exactly the right place.
Okay, let's get specific here. Are we talking about a rough, kind of shaky idle? Maybe trouble starting, especially right after you filled up the tank? Or, and this one's annoying, the engine just quits on you at a stoplight? You might even be noticing your gas mileage isn't what it used to be, or hey, maybe you just failed an emissions test. If any of this is ringing a bell, you are definitely on the right track.
So let's meet the little part that can cause such a big headache. It's called the canister purge valve, or, just the purge valve for short. It's a key player in your car's emission system, and believe me, when it starts to misbehave, your engine is going to let you know about it.
So what is this thing really? Well, think of the purge valve as a tiny, electronically controlled gatekeeper. It's a key part of this bigger system called the EVAP system. That stands for Evaporative Emission Control. And its entire job, its whole purpose, is to wrangle gasoline fumes and make sure they don't escape out into the atmosphere.
So how's it do that? It's actually a really clever little recycling system. So first, those gasoline vapors from your fuel tank get trapped in what's called a charcoal canister. Then, at just the right moment, the car's computer tells that purge valve, our little gatekeeper, to open up. And finally, all those captured vapors are sent right into the engine so they can be burned up with the fuel. It's pretty neat, right?
But what happens when this little gatekeeper just stops doing its job? Well, that's when all those mysterious symptoms start popping up. A failure right here can throw the entire engine completely out of balance.
Now, a purge valve usually fails in one of two ways. It either gets stuck open or it gets stuck closed. Now, the stuck open failure, that's the big one. It is by far the most common. This creates a constant vacuum leak, letting extra air and fuel vapor into the engine when it absolutely shouldn't be. Stuck closed is way less common, and it creates the exact opposite problem by trapping all those vapors inside the system.
So let's really focus on that most common failure, the stuck open valve. This is the one that causes the most noticeable and, frankly, the most frustrating driving issues.
The heart of the problem here is a constant vacuum leak. I want you to think of it like a small window that's been left open, that the engine's computer just doesn't know about. This leak lets extra air and fuel vapor get sucked into the engine all the time, which completely messes up the carefully calculated air-to-fuel ratio. It's kind of like trying to bake a cake, but using the wrong amount of flour. The engine just can't run smoothly.
And what are the results of this leak? Well, that's where you get that rough, choppy idle we talked about. It can cause your engine to stall out, especially right after you start it or when you come to a stop. It's also the reason you might have so much trouble starting after refueling. The engine is basically flooded with vapor. You might even hear a little hissing sound from the engine bay, and you can bet that check engine light is going to make an appearance.
Okay, pay close attention to this one. Of all the symptoms we've listed, a rough and unstable idle is the #1 most common sign of a stuck-open purge valve. If your car is shaking and the RPMs are bouncing all over the place at a red light, this little part should be very, very high on your list of suspects. All right, now for some hard data. If you have an OBD2 scanner, these are the codes you want to look for. P0441 and P0443, those point directly to a problem with the EVAP system, or the purge valve itself. But, and this is important, because that vacuum leak is wrecking the air-fuel mixture, you might also see codes like P0171, which means system too lean, or P0172 for system too rich.
Okay, so what about that other, less common failure? What happens when the valve gets stuck in the closed position and just refuses to open?
So when the valve is stuck closed, it creates the opposite problem. Instead of a leak, you get a bottleneck. The fuel vapors are collected in the charcoal canister just like they're supposed to be, but then they have nowhere to go. Our little gatekeeper never opens the gate.
The symptoms here are pretty different. Since the vapors can't be properly vented and burned off, they can build up, and you might start to notice a really strong smell of gasoline around your car. This is also going to cause an automatic fail on an emissions test, and it will definitely trigger that check engine light,
often with a code like P441 for incorrect flow.
So, you've seen the symptoms, you have a prime suspect. How can you be sure it's the purge valve before you just start replacing parts? Well, the good news is, there are a couple of fairly simple tests you can actually do yourself.
Okay, here's a simple test you can do for that really common stuck-open failure. With the engine idling, find the purge valve and carefully disconnect the hose that goes to the engine intake. Now, just put your finger over the port on the valve itself. Do you feel suction? Is it trying to pull on your finger? If you do, bingo, you found your problem. That's the vacuum leak. At idle, there should be no suction there at all.
Now for a more definitive test, you can take the valve completely out of the car. Using a 12-volt power source, you should hear a distinct click when you apply and remove power. That's the little solenoid inside working. But more importantly, try to blow through it. No air should pass when it's unpowered, but when you apply those 12 volts, air should flow through freely. If it fails either one of these tests, it's bad. Simple as that. So, after seeing how it works, how it fails, and how to test it, the big question remains. That frustrating idle, that stubborn check engine light, that weird trouble starting, could this small, simple little valve really be the key to solving your whole engine mystery? Well, all the evidence suggests it's a very, very strong possibility.